everybody out there in YouTube land. Jake of the OneManBand is back again, and welcome, my friends, to the very beginning. The fine, great beginning that is RWBY season once again. It is that time of year when the next RWBY volume is coming out to us. We're starting out RWBY Volume 5. Episode 1 is out to us. Now, it's time for us to break it down. Leading up to the premiere of Volume 5 left me wanting a little. I mean, the character shorts that were given to us, one of them was really good and the other two were mediocre at best. So I was really concerned for the volume itself when it finally came out. But my friends, I am happy to announce that Volume 5 surprised me. It surprised me on how much of a step forward this first episode is. Now, there are some faults in it that I don't like, but for the most part, it's amazing. So to start us off, am I the only one who thinks that it was sort of a fourth wall joke made when Nora asks whose idea was it to walk? Because, to be honest, a lot of us when Volume 4 came out were wondering why it had taken Team Ranger so long to get to Mistral. Crow and Team Ranger have finally arrived at the Kingdom of Mistral proper, and we sort of get a little recap of what happened in Volume 4 with what they say. They were attacked by killers and monsters, one of them almost died, it took them a really long time to get there, and pretty much that's it. It's just real short, real to the point, and I'm glad that they didn't dwell on it that long. So, we finally make it into Mistral, and what we see, my friends, is both amazing and a bit of a letdown. And once Crow and Team Ranger open that door, we get to see the Kingdom of Mistral in all of its glory. All of its still image glory. Now, I know that they used this back in Volume 3, where they were showing the outside world that we're all watching the Vital City tournament, but here, I feel like it was a bit out of place. The still shots are amazing and are really good art pieces of artwork, but I feel that with all the resources that Rooster Teeth and Team RWBY has now, they could have at least animated all this stuff. Hell, they animated the Menagerie Marketplace from Blake's character short. Why couldn't they animate a few scenes in Mistral? Instead, we just get these still shots, which, while feeling a bit out of place, don't completely break the immersion, because we're seeing some things that are completely new. It's in these still images that we see that there are grand marketplaces in Mistral that sell you anything from food to weapons, pretty much can sell you anything if you look hard enough, that be it legally or illegally. So there's probably lots of drugs, narcotics, illegal weapons, or, you know, anything of that matter that also flows through Mistral. As we learned from the World of Remnant short back in Volume 4 on Mistral itself, it has a real seedy underbelly, the Kingdom of Mistral. And the higher you go up the mountains of Mistral, the more hoity-toity and good society gets. The lower levels are for the lowlifes. And since I'm terrible at segues, we see that Mistral is a kingdom and a city built in a series of mountains. It is good natural defense against the creatures of Grimm. All of the cityscapes are going up the mountains, and there's mountains surrounding this area, so it's a very vertical city rather than a horizontal one. So the use of airships and elevators are probably real key to the Kingdom of Mistral itself, which means that there are probably very good choke points for fending off attacking Grimm. However, if there are lots of airborne Grimm, there might be a little bit more trouble when it comes to Grimm attacking the city. We see that everyone is included in the Kingdom of Mistral, humans and Faunus alike. We see Faunus sharing the exact same roles as humans, being merchants, being random, you know, consumers, being people that are just walking around the city. We even see someone that looks like Prince Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Whether that be a true Easter egg or a mistake on their part, we'll never know, but I think it's an Easter egg. And yes, let it also be known that it is in these stills that we finally see the first gay couple of RWBY, the series itself. now I guess we can all just be quiet about it, right? Right? And with the scope of the city out of the way, we learn that Haven Academy is sat atop one of the high mountains of Mistral, and Team Ranger and Crow are headed up. And it's here that we transfer to the best girl in the series, Weiss. She's still traveling across the continent of Anima to get to Mistral itself. Now, since Weiss was essentially running away and the closed borders are coming up for Atlas, she's pretty much being smuggled into Mistral. So her and her pilot are flying off radar, and she's pretty much smuggled herself onto some sort of cargo ship. Now, we're not exactly sure what he's transporting at this time, but we know that he is making runs between Mistral and Atlas, and he says that this is his last trip. So here's hoping you don't die, bud. I mean, you're not 2 weeks from retirement, right? Don't got a loving wife at home? Because if you do, you might want to keep that to yourself, or else the irony gods might want to kill you. It's stated that there's lots of air traffic in northern Anima, which may be a prelude to Atlas building up its army on the northern end of Anima, or maybe it's Mistral building up their army just in case Atlas decides to attack. We know that tensions are high between the kingdoms at this point, and the former trade partners Atlas and Mistral might be going at each other's throats soon, especially since the trade embargo of Atlas is still in effect and is probably affecting Mistral quite highly. We learn that there's still a lot of places across Anima that are still under attack by the creatures of Grimm. There's an airship in the area that is actually still under attack by creatures of Grimm at this moment of Weiss being transported across the area. And her pilot decides to ignore it. They can't get involved. We also learn that Weiss is traveling across the great lake that's on the continent of Anima, known as Lake Matsu. She is, as of right now, traveling across this grand lake, heading toward Mistral. So we get a bit more geography, and which I really love. I love geography. I love to know where places are and how to name things. And when the pilot of the ship decides not to interfere with another ship that's under attack by Grimm, Weiss is forced to become a bystander when other people are getting hurt by the creatures of Grimm. And as a huntress, or at least a huntress in training, this kind of hurts her. And I wonder if this is going to lead to some character development, or even some sort of form of guilt that she might have later on in the volume. Either way, I think that this is going to lead to some good character growth for Weiss. Switching back to Team Ranger and Crow, they finally make it up to Haven Academy, but find it pretty much empty. No one seems to be around. And might I say that in this scene right here in particular, where it kind of dwells on the shot a little bit, that grass looks fucking fantastic. This is some nice looking animated grass. So I gotta give compliments where compliments are due. Even traveling through the halls of Haven Academy itself, they can't find anyone. And Crow feels that something is not quite right with what's going on here. And so our heroes race to the headmaster's office, and right when they're about to go in, the doors swing open and they find Professor Leonardo Lionheart ready to walk out the door. And some hijinks ensue. And it's here that we finally get a proper introduction to Professor Leonardo Lionheart himself. We see that he's very much like a lion. He has this big old mane of a hairdo, a nice full beard. He seems to be an older gentleman, maybe more along the age of Port rather than Crow. And we see that he seems to hold on to the whole cowardly lion inspiration rather well. He seems to walk and hold his hands together, almost like he's expecting something, like he's you know, he's being watched, which he might very well be at all times. But we'll get to that in a little bit. He's a very different headmaster compared to the other two that we've seen. Ironwood was headstrong, iron-fisted, and willing to just, you know, punch before asking questions. Ozpin was a lot more contemplative and thought about things a lot more, while Lionheart seems a lot more I guess subservient would be the proper word. He's a lot more... He seems to just let things happen and watch them happen. He doesn't seem to be a man of action like his fellow headmasters are. And yes, we also know that Professor Lionheart is in the pocket of Salem. We learned that at the end of Volume 4, and we learned a little bit more about it here in Volume 5. So, with him being in the pocket of Salem, what does this mean for our heroes? The leader of the huntsmen in this area is working with, or at least being manipulated by, the main bad guy. So this is obviously going to lead to a lot of it's going to lead to a lot of hardships and a lot of probably stalling on Lionheart's part, while our heroes probably just want to go and do stuff. And I guess it wouldn't be a proper RWBY premiere without there being a little bit of Blake backstory. Now, we start off Blake's part of this episode with our heroes of Menagerie returning back to the Gira estate after a meeting that they had with the Fox brothers from the previous volume. They're saying that they won't allow them to get away with this, and we actually see Gira and Sun actually agree on something. It's so cute! They're bonding! From the information that the Belladonnas and Sun were able to gather off Ilya's phone, they found out that Ilya was working in league with with Adam and his more radical White Fang, and that the representatives of the White Fang in Menagerie are also in the pocket of Adam also. These two being Corsic and Finnick. Who are they again? See, this is where I see a very slight flaw in this part of the story. They reintroduce Corsic and Finnick as if we should automatically know who they are. And Corsic and Finnick really had barely any time in all of Volume 4, to the point where some people may not even remember their names. There's no visual representation of the two during this point, so if somebody wasn't paying attention during Volume 4, or maybe just, you know, stepped away from the episode to go, like, make lunch or go to the bathroom or something and missed that whole part, they would have no idea who Corsic and Finnick were. Now, once again, if I was writing RWBY, I would have had it so this part of the episode would start at the meeting with Corsic and Finnick, maybe towards the end, where it's just wrapping up. That way we would at least get a representation of Corsic and Finnick, a visual representation of them. That way we can attribute their names to actual faces. But it's a small little thing that I think should have been done. If you guys agree with me, be sure to leave a comment down below. If you think I'm just being nitpicky, well, you can also put that down below. But we also get to see that Blake and Ilya still aren't quite done with each other. They're going to be the main foils of each other during this volume, which I predicted back during Blake's character short. Ilya comes to the Belladonna Manor, again, even bypassing newly christened security for the Belladonna Manor to talk to Blake. The security sucks. You would think that these guards would be better at their job since they're protecting the former leader of the White Fang. But I guess, you know, plot needs to happen. We learned that the Belladonnas and Sun are going to address what they learned in the scroll that they got from Ilya, and they're going to tell everyone on Menagerie, turning everyone against Adam, and probably against the White Fang for the most part. Hopefully this will help usher in back the peaceful White Fang, maybe with Gira at the head, until Blake eventually. However, Ilya states that her plan isn't going to work, and there's still more to Ilya that she's not telling us quite yet. There's more to this plan that's in the workings right now. And we can see that Ilya, at least in some way, regrets the situation that she's in right now. Whether that be the situation that she's working with Adam, or the situation where Blake refuses to back down and Ilya knows that they're going to have to come to blows eventually. Either way, we're probably going to have to see them fight at one point during this volume. Cutting back to Team Ranger talking with Lionheart, we learned that Mistral suffered greatly after the Battle of Beacon. With the CCT going down and panic ensuing amongst the populace, the Grimm came in droves and attacked the city. Many huntsmen lost their lives during this fight, even some who were professors at Haven Academy. And I would have really liked to see that happen, and actually see some fighting? Some huntsman death? We don't really see that, ever, in this show. I would like to see that at some point, please. Please? And when Lionheart is discussing what happened at the Battle of Beacon, we also get a callback to Penny being, you know, ripped apart on screen. Now, I think this may be some sort of a potential drop of her back into the lore, just like, hey, remember Penny? Yeah, remember Penny, because, you know, she's kind of important. Does this mean that it's a potential return of Penny back to RWBY? I mean, they put Penny in RWBY Chibi, so I mean, the possibility might be there, but as much as I would like Penny to return to RWBY proper, I'm not sure if it's what the show truly needs. I guess it's just something that I'm gonna have to wait and sit upon and think about before I come to a full answer on where I truly stand on this issue. We also learn that due to the rapid attacks by the Grimm and the just amount of Grimm attacks that happened after the Battle of Beacon, Mistral has the most controlled area out of all of the kingdoms to keep a hold on. So this led to a lot of ground to cover and probably delayed defenses and attacks on the creatures of Grimm, which means that the situation in Mistral still isn't completely under control. This explains how there were a lot of villages during Volume 4 that were taken out by the Grimm, maybe still under attack by the Grimm, or still had Grimm problems. Because there's so much territory that's controlled by the Mistral Kingdom that they can't send huntsmen to every single one. They have to prioritize and figure out what to take out first. We also get a tie-in to what's going on with Weiss during this time. Politics between Mistral and Atlas have gone very sour. We know that Ironwood up in Atlas has already empowered a trade embargo. He's closing the borders. He's cutting off his kingdom and the dust that it provides to everyone, which is really hurting Mistral. Mistral needs dust and needs equipment to take out the mass amounts of Grimm that are still attacking its borders. And now that they're losing probably the biggest trade partner that they've ever had, things between the two kingdoms are going sour and are actually going and ramping up closer to war. However, through all of this negative talk, through all of this grand politics drama, we get back to the very niche thing that Crow is worried about, and that is the Spring Maiden. We learn that the Spring Maiden is very important to the kingdom of Mistral. We learn that the Maidens are somewhat connected to the relics that were left behind by the twin deities. The Maidens are the only ones who can open these relics. And not only that, only a certain Maiden can open up a certain relic. This is bullshit and a stupid fucking MacGuffin. Winter can only open up the Relic of Creation. Summer can only open up the Relic of Destruction. Fall can only open up the Relic of Choice. And Spring can only open up the Relic of Knowledge. Now, but besides the point that the relics were created literally like at the beginning of recorded time, and the Maidens were created, if not hundreds, but thousands of years later, you would think that these two being connected in that way is total bullshit, because if that were the case, how are the relics used before the Maidens? And why would anyone even go after the relics if they couldn't activate them? Unless, when the Maidens were created, they made it so magic mumbo jumbo, burn, they put a magic barrier around the relic so nobody can use it except if they have a maiden who is, you know, the maidens are supposed to be keeping the world safe and stuff. But, I mean, it's just so out of left field, so out of nowhere, and such a drop of weird lore that I just do not like it. This MacGuffiness use of the maidens to open up the relics, it just seems so out of nowhere, and so like, just, they're making the relics and the maidens more complicated so that things are more complicated. I just don't like it. And the flaws that I have seen with this, it really put me off on this episode. I was just like, really? They're really doing that? They're really going there? Damn it, this was almost the perfect episode. Okay. I had to get that out of the way. Now that that's out of the way, let's learn more about the Spring Maiden. The Spring Maiden was being trained at Haven Academy and had taken to her studies rather well. But the Spring Maiden pulled an Avatar Aang, and when she felt the true responsibility of her power and her destiny, she ran. She couldn't take it and she ran away. And it is then that she was picked up by a bandit tribe, the Bronwyn tribe. And yes, our predictions from Volume 4 were correct. Raven has the Spring Maiden in her possession, not only as a prisoner, but as a full-blown member of the tribe itself. Now, the Spring Maiden was picked up about 10 years ago from the present day. So, she's had time to not only hone her powers, but also integrate herself fully into the bandit tribe itself. So, she's gonna be a little bit institutionalized. Now, Crow has figured out the location where his sister and her tribe are located, so that they can go find the Spring Maiden and get her as far away from Mistral as possible. Mistral contains the Relic of Knowledge, and if they get the Spring Maiden as far away from Mistral as possible, then the Relic of Haven will be safe and will not be able to be opened by anyone. That is Crow's plan, and probably was Ozpin's plan, you know, when he was still around. However, Lionheart stalls for time and says that due to the lack of resources, an expedition of that scale could not be done. It would take days, if not weeks, to go through the politics and the red tape of everything. Crow, being more of a man of action, wonders why it would need to take so long. And like we have discussed before, many of the huntsmen in Mistral are off taking care of Grimm that have been invading and attacking the villages that are under Mistral's control. And when Crow even suggests that he goes with Team Ranger and Lionheart himself, Lionheart says that he's not the fighter he used to be, and even though Team Ranger are very capable fighters, there is no way that they can take on an entire tribe of bandits and a full-blown maiden who has time to hone her powers. While Crow and Raven are equally matched, the others that would come with Crow would be overwhelmed. So, with the plans of going after the Spring Maiden ground to a halt, Jean asks if there was any information gathered about Cinder and her team. And when Lionheart says that all they found were falsified documents and empty trails that led to nowhere, we can see that this actively messes with Jean. It makes him angry, so he still holds a grudge against Cinder for what he did to Pyrrha. And so, for the time being, we got Ranger and Crow. They're gonna stay in Mistral and think things over and probably devise a new plan on what to do about the Spring Maiden. So after an entire volume of traveling, they're finally staying in one place, and I'm just like, thank God! And it's also here that we learn Lionheart passes on all the information that he learned from Crow and Team Ranger onto Watts, who is probably going to pass it on to Salem in due time. We know that Salem is also looking for the maidens, and now she has been gifted the location of the Spring Maiden rather nicely, with a nice bow and maybe a nice little letter that says, hey, thought of you, here's a nice gift. Here you go. Things aren't looking good. And of course, we cannot forget about the forgotten one of Volume 4. We cannot forget about Yang Xiaolong and her part in this episode. We start out her part of this episode with a pun, of course. The pun of, she's at a gas station right now that also sells alcohol on a bar. You know, things are weird in Mistral. Anyway, this place is called Just Right, and the pun will come into play in a little bit. Now, we know that Yang is traveling across Mistral, and due to what we saw of her back in Volume 4, she seems to be trying to reconfigure back with her sister. And so probably this is just a pit stop on her way. And when she gets there, she seems to just be getting a water, you know, asking for some information, and there's this hooligan in the bar that says that she looks just right. And there's the pun! It's the name of the place, and, well, it describes Yang pretty well. And while this hooligan proceeds to compliment Yang's physical features, when he starts to go for her hair, Yang doesn't hold any punches. Quite literally. She goes from 1 to 100 so quickly and just knocks this guy flat, and he bounces all over the store and out the door like it was a Tom and Jerry cartoon. And for this, she's rewarded with a water on the house, because this guy, well, he was annoying. I think that deserves a water, don't you? So it's here that we see a completely new Yang, if you will. She doesn't seem to have so much of the bubbly, excited party girl attitude that she had in the, you know, during the Beacon saga. She seems to be more to the point now. She's to the point. She's still easily angered, almost to the point where it seems to be even more so. She's more angered by things. Like, she gets angry at this guy even sooner than she would back during the Beacon saga. So she seems very quick to anger, but after she punches this guy out, we see that there's still a shake in her hand from all the excitement that happened. And that's the PSD that still remains in her system. And I'm so glad that it's still there. Yes, I'm so glad that she is not back to 100% yet, as was shown, or at least alluded to back in Volume 4. Because this is what we needed. We needed to see a Yang who was confident enough to go out into the world, but once she actually did something, we see that she's still unsure of herself. She doesn't know if she's ready for this, but she's out there now, so she has to do stuff. And after she drinks her water, we learn that she's looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say, hmm?
And so I instantly thought, oh, she's looking for Ruby, so she's gonna ask this guy if she's seen her. But this guy starts talking about how no one ever comes out here, except for one person. That person being Raven Bronwyn, Yang's mother. The mother that she's been looking for years. Disappointed! As much as I want Yang to go after her mom and for her to have time with Raven, this was not the time! Yang is supposed to be going after Ruby! Go after your little sister and keep her safe! This was the second big no-no in this episode that I did not like. And while I do see the relevance of this to the story and how this will play more into Yang's character, I personally don't like it. So I hope that in the future episodes things will get explained a little bit more, and maybe we'll get to see why the story seems to be going in this direction. But for right now, I'm not so happy with Yang. So not only is Yang looking for Raven, it seems that she has actually found someone who can find Raven for her. The ruffian that she knocked out of the bar knows who she's looking for. And I think he knew right at the moment where Yang opened her eyes and they were crimson red, right before hitting him. I think that he knew, I know those eyes. Those are the eyes of Raven Bronwyn. I know who this girl is looking for. So I think this ruffian is going to at least have a little bit bigger role than we thought he would. And he's probably going to be the one responsible taking Yang to Raven. And, of course, we finally are drawing near to the end of the episode, where we actually get a complete and total paste and copy of the after-credit scene of Volume 4, where Crow is confronted by Oscar, and Crow finds out that Ozpin is in Oscar's head. Yet, there is more to this scene than meets the eye. We see that Team Ranger have finally gotten back to the house that they're staying at, and there's a knock on the door. Now, our heroes are a bit on edge to this knock on the door. I mean, who could it be? They don't know anyone in Mistral. The last person they came across that wasn't Crow tried to kill them. So maybe it's another assassin. They're on their toes, but when they open the door, they see a simple farm boy sitting outside, and it's Oscar Pine. And we see that Oscar is simply returning something that Team Ranger needs. A drunkle Crow who stumbles into the house, claiming that he has found him. He has found him. We get some nice moments with RWBY right here, where she comes out into the living room screaming her head off about how she wants to read her comics in peace, and that she cannot believe that Uncle Crow is drunk again. She asks if he's drunk again, and he just replies with maybe. Now it's here that we get a big old bomb drop that I thought was going to be left toward the end of Volume 5. Oscar, he comments on RWBY's eyes the same way Ozpin did back in the very first episode, saying that you have silver eyes. And we can tell that this kind of puts everyone off. They're like, what the heck? Why is he saying that? What's going on here? And it is here that Oscar drops the bomb that he himself is Professor Ozpin. And that, my friends, is the bomb that is dropped, the mic is dropped, the intro plays, and we're off to Volume 5! Now, my friends, I'm going to be talking about the intro in a totally separate video, because this intro needs to be digested and needs to be picked apart in its own video on its own. But, in conclusion, this episode was what we needed after Volume 4. We needed a return to form episode that showed all of our main girls doing their stuff, but also concentrated a majority of its time on RWBY and what's going on with Team Ranger. Of course, there were a few holes in there and things that I didn't like the Corsican and Finnick stuff, and of course, the big stuff with the Maidens and the relics, you know, all that bullcrap. And then, of course, with Yang's attitude and her sort of switch of attitude to go after her mother. That stuff is kind of like the cons of this episode, but I think the pros outweigh these cons. So I'm not sure if Yang's new attitude and the way that her story seems to be going is going to be good or bad. I'm not sure, and I hope that in the episodes to come, we at least get some sort of answer that I can say, yes, it's good, or no, it's bad. And judging by the amount of time that we saw of Weiss and the amount of time that we see of her in the intro, is Weiss going to be kind of pushed to the side, and this volume is going to concentrate more on Yang, Blake, and RWBY? I mean, I don't want my best girl to be pushed to the side. Best girl, no be pushed to the side. Weiss deserves a lot more screen time than what she got in Volume 4. But all things considered, the music was fantastic. This intro is amazing. The animation is great. And let me at least say, the inclusion of the comedy, the physical comedy, the word comedy, all of that, the inclusion of all that cartoony, cartoony comedy is so needed right now. After, you know, Volume 3 where everything was super sad, after Volume 4 where it was just a snooze fest, this is what we need. A combination of action, drama, and comedy. And I hope that they at least stick to having these small moments of comedy in RWBY, because it makes the show a lot more watchable. It makes it a lot more enjoyable. And I am so excited to see what this volume has to offer. This episode was the new hope that we needed, that RWBY fans needed. It's the hope that I needed for RWBY. I'm excited for the future episodes, and so my friends, that is the review of RWBY Volume 5, Episode 1. I hope that you enjoyed. Hey everybody out there in YouTube land. Thanks for watching this review. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that you guys will leave a like down below if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you feel inclined to. Leave comments down below. Leave all those comments down below. I want to read your comments. So, and to everyone out there who's, just found me or stuck with me since Volume 1, I hope that this is going to be the start of something amazing. And so, my friends, until next time, I want you to be a good person, tip your waitresses, keep moving forward, and I'll see you guys next time I'm out there in YouTube land. I'll see you then. Yeah-yo!